Welcome to Fabulous Women Over 40, hosted by celebrity stylist Kara Allan. Join Kara as she interviews amazing women, sometimes younger and amazing men as well, in their 40s and beyond. Here's Kara with our Fabulous Woman of the Day.
Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to another inspiring episode of the Fabulous Women Over 40 podcast. I'm your host, Kara Allan, a personal stylist and branding expert with over 22 years experience in helping women and men create powerful presences through their appearance. This podcast is dedicated to celebrating the incredible women over 40 and men who are redefining what it means to be fabulous at any age. Today, I'm joined by the amazing melodygodfred. She's a best-selling poet, author, and speaker whose work is dedicated to helping people cultivate self-love, presence, and purpose. As the creator of the Self-Love Pinky Ring and the author of Self-Love Poetry for Thinkers and Feelers and the ABCs of Self-Love, Melody has built a global community of readers who turn to her words for wisdom, encouragement, and empowerment. Her latest book, Moon Garden, Poetry for Manifestation, is an invitation to step into your own cycles of growth, release, and renewal. Inspired by the phases of the moon and the changing seasons, the book weaves together poetry and reflection to guide readers through the journey of manifestation, not just as an act of wanting, but as a practice of trust, surrender, and alignment. Melody's work has been featured in Forbes, Oprah Daily, and Today with Hoda and Jenna, resonating deeply with those on the path of self-discovery and transformation. With Moon Garden, she continues her mission to empower others, especially women, to trust themselves, embrace their cyclical nature, and step fully into their power. Transformation doesn't happen in a straight line. It unfolds like a garden, blooming in its own time. Melodygodfred is here to guide us through that process. Tune in for an inspiring conversation on manifestation, self-love, and the poetry of personal growth. Welcome, Melody. So good to have you back.
Thank you, Kara. It's always so good to be with you.
Yes, it's been about 2 years, I think, since we last had our conversation. I still have my pinky rings. I still enjoy them. I think the one that I loved the best, the white quartz, was the one that got me engaged because I used to wear it as an engagement ring.
So now that's manifestation, right?
Exactly. So all you single ladies out there, get one of these self-love pinky rings and put it on that ring finger, girl, because you never know. All right. So today, catch us up to what's going on. Like, what have you been doing in the last 2 years? What's been going on in your life?
Well, I'd say the biggest thing that's been happening is since June of 2023, I've been working on my new book, Moon Garden. And it was amazing how this book came to me. Like, I'm a person who really believes in being a channel and receiving messages from the universe,
right?
Or God, or whatever you want to call it, source, spirit, just something greater than you that's tapped into everything. And in June, I went to Ojai, which is this small, mystical little town outside of Los Angeles. And while I was there, I kept getting these little pings about night blooming jasmine, which has always been one of my favorite flowers. But everywhere I went, there was jasmine. The book I opened, it was about jasmine. The tea shop I went to, they served me jasmine tea. The woman's name who gave it to me, her name was Jasmine. I mean, it was unbelievable. And I shared about this on social media and my connection with jasmine. And someone asked me, well, have you ever been to a moon garden? And I said, no, I don't know what that is. And they said, oh, you should look it up. It's a garden that's designed to be experienced at nighttime, and night blooming jasmine is a big part of that. Long story short, she planted the seed in me, and the universe planted the seed in me. And I spent the next 2 years writing this book. And now it comes out in October. And I truly believe it is the work I'm most proud of, mainly because I grew so much and learned so much during the process of writing it. So I'm grateful to be able to share it now.
That's amazing. So how do you personally define manifestation, and how does it differ from, I don't know, the mainstream understanding of what manifestation means?
You know, I've been talking to my daughters. I have twin daughters that are 12 and a half. They're in 7th grade. And as you can imagine, they are skeptical about everything right now. Like, we communicate in eye rolls and sighs. That's like their two main forms of communication.
Right.
And I've been trying to explain to one of them that your energy, your thoughts, how you engage with the world around you, these are all things that are actually in your control. Like you are
Mm,
not just a victim of circumstance.
right.
And I think that's like a really good way to express my view of manifestation. It's
Mm-hmm.
being in an intentional relationship
Mm-hmm.
with your world, both present, past, and future.
Mm,
And so I'd say it's two pieces. One, it's having the focus and clarity to understand what you deeply desire, not from
mm-hmm.
an ego, oh, I want a sports car, but from a aligned, my authentic self needs this in order for me to achieve my fullest expression.
Right.
And once you know what that is, the next step is to cultivate that intention through
Mm-hmm.
daily rituals and a consistent practice.
Mm,
So it's knowing what you want and having the bravery, courage, and discipline to make it happen every single day.
mm-hmm.
And then one day it comes. And maybe it's not exactly in the linear way you thought it would come. Maybe it wasn't the direct result of what you were even doing.
Mm-hmm.
But when you tell the universe energetically what it is you desire and you show that you're willing to commit to it, the universe does conspire in your favor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I really do believe that. And not
Yeah.
just the universe metaphysically, but everyone around you. I think we're all so much more connected than we think.
Mm-hmm.
And to answer your question, what does manifestation mean to other people? I think a lot of people say the same thing, that it's that combination of intention, desire, action. I think some people limit it a little bit more to just what's happening in your mind. Like,
Mm-hmm.
make a vision board and then it'll come. You just have to buy that glue stick and you're on your way. And that can certainly be a piece of it.
Right.
But I think if you want to amplify your manifestation, it really is about creating those rituals around it.
Mm-hmm. So what does your daily ritual look like for manifestation? Or do you actually do it every day, or is it kind of just a thought process, or do you actually, I don't know, write it down or talk it out, or what do you do?
So my manifestation rituals are more synced with the moon. So on the
Mm.
new moon and full moon,
Mm-hmm.
I make space to be in stillness, to look at the moon, to reflect, and then to write. And
Mm.
the way that I write is on every new moon, I think about what I want to reclaim in my life. And
Mm.
in my book, I actually give you suggestions with regard to what it makes sense to reclaim each month of the year because the
Mm-hmm.
moon isn't the same moon all the time.
Mm,
The
right.
January moon, which is the wolf moon, is all about connection, whereas the June moon is all about indulgence and pleasure. So, what you're
Mm.
going to try to manifest during those times is different.
Mm.
But for me, I think about, okay, on the new moon, what do I want to reclaim? And then on the full moon, I write about what I want to release.
Okay.
And in both instances, I borrow a practice that I kind of adapted from Joe Dispenza,
Mm-hmm.
who writes so beautifully about, you know, becoming supernatural and like understanding how powerful we all are. And
Mm-hmm.
I actually write affirmations where I claim with joy and gratitude whatever future it is that I'm hoping for today.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of saying like, my book reach it reach my book will reach millions of people when it comes out in October.
Mm.
I'll write, with gratitude and joy, I celebrate that my book has reached millions of people and I
Mm.
bring that future experience into my present and I
Mm. Nice.
start writing my story as though it's already happened. And
Nice.
it's been a really beautiful thing to watch the things I've claimed happen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Sometimes it's something really mundane and silly that I'll just throw in there because not everything needs to be a big wish.
Right.
And sometimes it is the big wish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We just had a blood moon, I think, recently.
hmm
What would was that a full moon or a new moon?
So I actually led an entire workshop on this
Oh, nice.
yeah, while the blood moon lunar eclipse was happening. So I'm so happy you bring it up.
Mm.
It was a very, very powerful and rare energetic portal that happened. So it was two things at once. One, it was a full moon. It
Mm-hmm.
was the full worm moon, which happens every March. But in addition to that, it was also a full lunar eclipse, and it's the only full lunar eclipse we're going to have this year. There aren't
Mm.
any other ones happening. And
Dang.
what happens when there's no, but I still truly believe that energy is always available to us. You can
Okay.
always just pull it in.
Okay.
And so this specific lunar eclipse, a lunar eclipse happens when the Earth, the moon, and the sun are in perfect alignment.
Mm-hmm.
And then a shadow is cast on the moon, which makes it turn red for a few brief moments. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why it was given the name blood moon.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens during an eclipse energetically that's so powerful is that it pulls you back and it reveals everything that you need to let go of. And then
Mm.
it catapults you with that new lightness and freedom and clarity into your dream future.
Hmm.
And I am not an astrologist. I only know the very, very basic surface level. I
Right.
will say that for me, the moon is my anchor.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason she is my anchor is because I can watch her cycle across the sky every single month with
Mm-hmm.
certainty. She is always there.
Right.
And she reminds me that I too am cyclical, especially
Mm.
as women.
Yeah.
That cycle is embedded in our bodies. And
Yes.
yet we run from ours, we hide from ours, we try to minimize ours. And yet the moon cycles proudly in all her glory every month.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually why we call it a month. Month comes from moon. And
Mm-hmm.
so our very experience of time is governed by the moon.
Right.
And yet we're rushing. And for me, the sun always makes me feel like, okay, rise and shine, time to grind. Like that's the message I get
Mm-hmm.
from the sun. Every
Right.
day she's up, she's down, and it's like a daily cycle. Whereas the moon accounts for time in months. And I love the idea of giving myself that grace and taking my time.
Mm-hmm.
And even manifestation, I love that it's a practice that I engage in monthly, and I remove that pressure for it to be something like, okay, you got to do it every single day. Like if you don't do it, if
Mm-hmm.
you skip a day, you're going to fall behind. Because I feel like
Right.
that's the story of the rest of my life.
Mm.
As
Mm-hmm.
a woman in her 40s, my responsibilities don't wait for me until nighttime. They are at my door every minute of the day.
Right.
But by the time that last kid goes to sleep and then my husband goes to sleep, I've got 2 good hours where the world
Mm-hmm.
belongs to me. And I
Right.
make sure to poke my head out my window, look at the moon, thank the moon. I got through another day. I
Mm-hmm.
try to pull in her peace and ground myself. And then I feel renewed to start again.
Mm. So for those of us who didn't weren't aware of this being such an amazing, powerful time during this blood moon, what could we do to kind of reclaim that
Yes.
energy?
So I think the most powerful practice we did at this workshop
Mm-hmm.
is first we had everyone journal, and I'm happy to send you some journal prompts that people can use
Oh, that'd be
that
great.
really unearth like what is it that you've been just carrying around that it is just time to let go of.
Mm-hmm.
And then what we had everyone do is we had them write down. I gave them a piece of paper that said write it down, let it burn.
Mm.
And I had them write that down, the thing they want to let go of. And then we
Mm-hmm.
literally burned it.
Yeah.
We took out matches and we read them out loud so that everyone could hear it. And then we collectively experienced what it feels like to let go.
Nice.
And then what we did from there is then we thought about, okay, well, now that I've released, now that I've made space, what do I deeply desire? And
Mm-hmm.
we actually wrote those things down on seed paper, which is paper that you can plant that has seeds in it that grows.
Mm.
And we sent everyone home with their intentions on seed paper so that they can go create a journal. A garden. They can go at home and create a garden that's born of their intentions.
Wow.
So you can get that anywhere on the internet. So I just think between those two practices of
Mm-hmm.
burning what you want to let go of and planting what you want to call in, that's a wonderful practice for anyone who wants to embrace the energy of the blood moon.
So seed paper, it's
Hmm.
actual, it grows, something will grow from
Yeah.
the seed paper. That's super
Yes.
cool, especially because
Yes.
everybody's starting to plant their gardens and whatnot. I went to
Yes.
a seed starting class last week, and we learned everything I thought I knew about planting vegetables went out the window. So I learned how to, make a little greenhouse in a solo cup, and all these
That's
other things.
amazing.
So super cool. So yeah, that would be amazing. I have to look up where I can get Amazon. I'm sure I can get some seed paper.
Yes. Yes.
So cool. So you describe Moon Garden as a companion for the journey rather than just a book of poetry. So what do you hope that readers will take from it?
I hope that God, so much. I hope that it helps people feel less alone,
Mm,
because so much of the poetry in there really speaks to the fact that we are all interconnected and
mm-hmm.
that we can only make it through this time together.
Right.
And so I think that's really important. And then I also think that the book has 12 chapters, and it has one chapter for every month of the year.
Mm,
And so for those who wish, the book comes out in October. You can pick it up and make it your companion for the whole year. In January, you can read about January, and you can start doing these practices that we've been talking about, manifesting on the new moon, on the full moon, writing affirmations, and using the themes in each chapter to guide your journey.
mm-hmm.
Or you can honestly use it as an oracle. Flip to any page,
Mm-hmm.
receive the message that's meant to reach for you on that day. I think a lot of people use my book, Self-Love Poetry, for thinkers and feelers in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I constantly get messages from people in DMs or emails where they say, I don't know how, but I always get exactly the message I need to hear.
Wow.
And I think that's our dance, right? That is our dance with the energy of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
That when we are intentional and say, book, give me what I need to read today, it does actually happen because you're in that dance.
Right. So the book Moon Garden, it emphasizes that transformation doesn't happen in a straight line. Can you talk about the importance of trusting the process?
Absolutely. One of my most popular poems ever, and it's very short, and I'll recite it for you, says, I only found my rhythm when I realized that even the steps backward were part of the dance.
Hmm. Love that.
Yeah, thank you. I love it too, because it takes what could be perceived as a mistake
Mm-hmm.
and actually makes it part of the beauty of the unfolding.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine you're watching two people dancing. When one partner steps backwards, you don't think she's making a mistake. You think, like, that's so elegant. That's a beautiful part of the dance. But
Right.
in our lives, when we take a step back, when it seems like we were getting closer to our goal and then we experience a setback, we're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, it's ruined. And I
Mm,
think that one thing I'm really attracted to these days, and I have been really kind of exploring for a long time, is this visual of a spiral.
mm,
And spirals aren't about going forward, they're about unfolding, about
mhm,
revealing,
mhm,
and then in researching Moon Garden, I was able to learn that nature is born of spirals, like
mhm,
galaxies spiral.
mhm,
Different plants and different flowers, like the moonflower or a fern, when they open, they don't just open, they
mhm,
spiral open,
mhm, mhm.
shell spiral open. And I think that word even is such a dirty word in our culture. People will say, oh, I'm spiraling, like it's a bad thing. But I actually see spiraling as ascension.
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
it's about unraveling what doesn't serve you so that you can ascend
Mhm.
and become more aligned with your truth.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's having these visuals, these like new anchors for how I ground myself visually, even
Mhm,
in my
mhm.
thinking. It's been really helpful. Like, I'm not climbing the ladder anymore. Like, that visual is gone,
Yeah.
because I climbed the ladder throughout the early part of my life, and all it got me to was a life that I didn't actually want.
Right.
Right?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
So
think
I'm
of
gonna,
a spiral staircase and how pretty it
yeah.
is. There's a house that's not too far from me that I when I drive by it, it has a spiral staircase coming from the
Yeah.
deck down to the ground, and
Yes.
it's just so pretty. It looks very French influenced, but
Yes.
in the architecture, and it's just like every time I look, it just makes me happy every time I drive by it. I'm like, that's so pretty. It's just so
Yes.
elegant and amazing looking.
And
So,
how much more elegant than if it was just a normal staircase that went up, you know what I
right.
mean?
Yeah.
And yet, like, we've all designed our lives around a staircase with very set milestones that are supposed
Mm-hmm.
to happen at specific times and in a specific sequence. And, it doesn't always work.
Right.
We are allowed to bloom at our own pace and in our own way, and
Mm-hmm.
without having to compare ourselves to the other things happening around us.
Right.
Um, so I
For
hope
sure.
this book gives people that inspiration to find new rhythms in their own
Yeah.
lives.
And to find their own French beautiful spiral staircase, because I
Yes.
wouldn't have noticed it had it been like a regular staircase. I see
Yeah.
those all the time, and it didn't even like I don't notice it. But that one, it caught my eye the first time I drove by it, and I was like, "That's
Yes.
amazing!" So
Yes.
interesting. So what role does self-love and surrender play in manifestation?
I love this question. I really think that self-love is the alignment piece. It has
Mm,
to start with you. Because
okay.
manifestation can't come from like your ego self. It can't come
Mm,
from pleasing others. It can't come from doing what you think you're supposed to do. It
right.
has to be born of your truth.
Mm-hmm.
And self-love is a pathway to authenticity. It's about getting to know yourself in all your glory, your light, your darkness, embracing all of it, making
Mm-hmm.
peace with all of it. And that's really where the surrender piece comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Manifestation is not having a tight grip on the future. It's about
Right.
letting go and letting in. And I think that also starts with yourself. Can you surrender to yourself? Can you
Mm-hmm.
stop being at war with yourself? Can you be at peace with who you are?
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you achieve that peace internally, then you're able to actually have it with the world at large. You start
Mm-hmm.
experiencing that peace with the people in your life, with your job, with your community. And that supercharges manifestation because manifestation doesn't thrive in conflict. It
Mm-hmm.
it comes from peace and ease. And so surrender is that white flag, right? That's like, I'm ready. I trust. I'm
Yeah.
willing to let this happen the way that it should.
Mm-hmm. Because I feel like when we want something so bad or we want it to go a certain way, there's so much like this grip on
Yes,
things, and I
it's the
remember
tight fist.
hearing about Oprah when she talked about how she wanted the role, in The Color Purple so bad, and she was just like, oh, and then they told her that somebody said to her, we have real actresses auditioning for this role. We had, Alfre Woodard
Mhm.
auditioned for this. And then she's like, well, and then I thought, I'm not getting this role. And then I thought it was because I was fat. So I went to a fat farm and I'm running around this track trying to lose some weight. And then she started thinking, well, maybe I could just, if I'm not going to get it, and I could be happy with Alfre Woodard. I could celebrate her getting it. And then, just her releasing it and surrendering
Yeah,
it was when the call came that, hey, Steven Spielberg's like, you're about to get this role, but you shouldn't lose no weight, so get off the fat farm or whatever. But that's
yeah,
what we do. I think we get so caught up, and then we're just like, oh my God, I have to have this or whatever. And then sometimes we actually get that thing. And like you said, you get the job and the life, and it's not what you want. And you're like, maybe this wasn't right. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Because God brings us things when we're ready for them, not when we
yeah,
want them necessarily, like when we're actually able to handle whatever it is that we're asking for. So if we don't have it yet, it there could be something else waiting on, and maybe it's not us. It could be another person who's a part of that manifestation that's not in the picture yet or not ready yet or whatever it is.
yeah,
So just learning to accept and surrender to to
yeah.
not
And
our timing, as it
it's really about understanding that, like, all you can ask for is that you receive what is your highest good.
were. Mm-hmm.
You receive what allows you to be of greatest service.
Mm-hmm.
And we may not have all the information to even know what that looks like,
Exactly.
you
Yeah,
know?
for sure.
But rooting yourself in that, please, God, or however you believe, something
Hmm.
greater than yourself, allow me to be of service, allow me to achieve my greatest good.
Right.
Because when I write, that's where it comes from. Like,
Hmm.
if I wanted to be, I started my career as a lawyer. I mean, like,
Mm.
financially, that was a much better path. So if
Right.
I wanted to choose a path that was about like what is going to make me the safest, I
Hmm.
could have just stayed in that role.
Right.
And then as you and I met, like when I was in a period of my life where I was running my own business, multiple businesses, and it was all
Hmm.
about like, okay, how do I help people? But how do I, girl boss? And like I had this like very intense drive to like create something and leave my mark.
Mm.
And I think I've softened a lot over the last few years,
Hmm.
and I have a lot more trust than I've ever had.
Right.
And I think because of that, the work that I'm doing, what I'm writing, the way I'm connecting with people, it's
Hmm.
hitting on a deeper level
Right.
because it comes from my own manifestation journey of arriving in this moment where I truly feel like I'm doing the work that is my greatest good.
Hmm. And that's important, more
Mhm.
important than the things we think are. Well, I mean, it's all important, right? But
No, it's
everybody,
all important. Like, I need to live. I live in Los Angeles. I have three
right?
kids, like,
You have to
and I
be
think
able to
this is an
pay your
important
rent.
piece. Yeah. And I think sometimes there's a lot of privilege wrapped up in these conversations. Like, not everybody has the ability to just like transform their lives and leave all the things behind and make a new life.
Right.
But I think the one thing we do all have control over is regardless of the confines of your life, you can always manifest in your mind. And what I
Hmm.
mean by that is you can change what you believe. You can change your inner
Mm.
dialogue. You can
Right.
change the stories. I was with my dad yesterday who's 75 years old,
Mm.
and sometimes I see that like his inner voice is one that believes that like he's always in danger.
Mm.
He's had a very hard life,
Yeah.
and he's always looking out to make sure that the person he's engaging with isn't going to harm him.
Mm.
And
That drains a lot of energy, I would
That's
imagine.
that's really hard, and it's also very earned because of the life he's had. I get it.
Yeah.
And yet, I think he deserves to have peace in his mind.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what if every single day you said to yourself, I'm safe,
Hmm.
I can trust.
Yeah.
No, not everyone is out to sting me. And I
Hmm.
gave him, this visual of a bee because I write
Hmm.
about the bees in my book.
Mm-hmm.
And when bees want to communicate with each other, they dance. That's
Oh.
literally physiologically what they do. If they want to say there's a flower a mile away with nectar, they come back and they dance
Well,
to
so
share the good
nice.
news,
I love that.
right? And when I shared that with someone recently, well, they said to me is, did you know most bees don't even have stingers? And even if they do have a stinger, they're not going to use it. So all this fear we have around bees and being
Mm.
stung
Right.
is actually statistically based on like a very low likelihood.
Mm.
And so those two things, the fact that bees dance and they don't sting, I told my dad, I'm like, imagine everyone approaching you as a dancing bee. Like, what if you meet them in that place? And then if they give you information that makes you believe that you should be cautious.
Yeah.
But what if the preliminary view is a dancing bee? Imagine if we all did that and we were
Right.
a little less quick to be vigilant and at arms and in conflict with each other.
Yeah. That would make the world a very nice place. I would have to say, for sure. Instead of always assuming somebody's out to get us,
Yeah,
that's, yeah. I don't know your dad's story, but I can imagine he has, like you said, he earned that by
yeah,
the way his life was. And there's always a new story you can
yeah.
tell yourself.
That's
So,
the one thing we have like true control over. And learning that, I didn't learn it until my 30s, is I think why I'm able to be where I am today,
hmm.
because I was in constant fight or flight I think a lot of people operate from that place of
Yeah.
just surviving.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very real. And I don't think minimizing anyone's trauma is the solution. It's
No.
giving this path towards peace. And
Yeah.
in my book, one of the poems that I love so much, and kind of a poem, it says, "The only word spoken in the garden." That's the title.
Mm-hmm.
And then it has the word peace in like 15 different languages.
Oh, nice.
Because if you step out into a garden, it's never in conflict. Everything is finding a way to grow alongside each other. Everything
Mm-hmm.
finds a way to thrive.
Yeah.
And I just love using nature as this grounding exercise for myself,
Yeah.
because the answers I'm seeking are not on Instagram. The answers I'm seeking are not in the TV show I watched last night.
Right.
The answers I am seeking are always in nature. And whether it's the moon or a flower or a bee, I love that it's always available to us. And I just
Mm-hmm.
wish we were all kind of moving in that direction a little bit more. And I hope that this book does that. It gives people a pathway back to nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of the things that they gave us at the seed starter was a list of all of the seeds that loved different other seeds that
Mm,
grows well with like if you want them to grow more harmoniously, put them with this type of seed and they'll kind of help each other, I guess, grow. And I
yeah.
thought that was really cool because I'd never heard or thought of that either. Like, hey, if you
Yeah,
put
those
these,
symbiotic relationships,
yeah,
they help each other grow.
yeah,
And I
I thought
think
that
we
was
can
cool.
also have that with each other, instead of being in such conflict all the time.
So, and then speaking of embracing things, how do we learn to embrace like you were talking about not going back and regretting, but embracing our imperfections or the choices that we made that we thought, put us in a place where we didn't want to be or whatever. How do we see that as part of our growth and not a setback or like something that we might have missed or, because I don't think we could ever really miss anything. God
Yeah,
uses all of our zigzags, because one of the things I always say is everything is always working out for me. Everything's
yeah.
always working out for me. So,
Well, one of the pieces I write about in the book is self-blame.
mm,
And I think a lot of us engage in self-blame,
mm-hmm,
but the why of it psychologically is really, really interesting.
mm,
Because when you practice self-blame, what you're actually trying to do is exercise control over an undesirable situation.
oh, makes sense.
Because it's like, okay, well, I'll give you an example I like to give. Like, imagine you get robbed.
Mm,
I've been robbed before, and I never blame the robber. Like, in my story, it's always I wasn't paying attention to my surroundings.
right.
I wasn't walking fast enough. I had too many valuable things in my bag. I was too flashy. Like, I make it about
Yeah.
blaming myself
Mm-hmm,
because that means I have control.
right.
Like, had I perhaps not done those things, then this terrible thing wouldn't have happened to me. When in reality, we don't have control. Sometimes things go wrong.
Yeah.
What we perceive as like, oh, I made a mistake, and if I were just smarter, it wouldn't have happened. Like, we're living our lives and always doing the best that we can.
Mm-hmm,
Sometimes things go wrong, and it is not our fault.
right.
And so, one, I think understanding why we do this, why we blame ourselves, was really healing for me. Like, it was easier for me to let go of that practice when I realized that, it's my tendency to want to control everything again. And
Mm-hmm,
if I can make myself feel deeply safe and have trust and love, if I can
yeah.
make trust and love my anchors, I don't need control.
Yeah.
So that's a big shift. And then the other thing I think people really lose sight of, and I know I certainly do, and I think as women or men in our 40s, there isn't much room for this in our lives.
Mm,
We deprioritize or almost completely abandon pleasure. Like, we don't have
mm,
any pleasure in our lives. And what I love about pleasure is it can only be experienced in the present moment,
yes.
right? You cannot experience your past pleasure. You cannot experience your future pleasure. It's
Mm,
only here and now. It's only when you are deeply present and fully embodied that you can experience deep pleasure, delight, like profound joy. It only
right.
happens now.
Mm-hmm,
And so I think that's another way. If you find yourself to constantly be either like dress rehearsing tragedy, like
Yeah.
Brene Brown says, and worrying
Right.
about the future, or you keep ruminating on your past and the mistakes and the pain. Ask yourself, how can I give myself pleasure today?
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing what a remedy pleasure is for suffering the past or suffering the future.
Yeah. I love that you said that the June moon is about pleasure and whatever
Hmm.
you were saying, because that's my birthday month.
I
And so I
remember.
celebrate the whole month from June 1st all the way to the 30th, even though my birthday is on the 5th, because it's like, why don't I get a month? How, you can't just have a
Yes,
day. You have to have the whole month.
it's all about you. And I think all of us can tap into that energy, especially in June. Pleasure is not a luxury. Like
Yeah.
pleasure is something we should be able to give ourselves every single day. And more importantly, we should know what gives us pleasure. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've recently discovered a class where I dance and I shake and I scream and I yell
Mm-hmm.
in addition to like working out. And that is like the most pleasure I feel all week. I am so activated and in my body and just giving myself permission to scream.
Yeah.
Like, do you ever scream? Like not at someone, but like proactively, like I'm gonna scream right now.
The only time it might happen is in the car, because I don't want anybody to think in my house that somebody's being murdered and they need to call
Yeah.
the police. You know what I mean? So in
Most
my
of us
car
don't have a
sometimes.
place,
Yeah.
right? Like now I get to go to a class at least once or twice a week where that's part of the invitation. And
Nice.
even during this workshop that I did early on in it, my co-facilitator, Jess, who brought this piece into the workshop, and I'm so grateful for her. She was like, "Okay, guys, we're gonna shake for a few minutes. We're gonna dance for a few minutes. We're gonna chant for a few minutes, and we are going to scream for a few minutes." And there
Nice.
was no hesitation. We did one, two, three, and everyone screamed at the top of their lungs.
Yeah.
And you could feel the tension leave everyone's bodies.
Nice.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, screaming feels really good. I highly recommend it. I highly like if please, in addition to like burning what you want to let go and planting what you want, like find a space. See if there's a class near you that allows it. There are
Yeah.
places that advertise primal screaming, forest screaming. I don't know. It exists. Or to your point, do it in your house when you're alone. Do it in your car. Do it in the shower. Do it
Yeah.
underwater.
Yeah. Right.
Find a place because we hold, especially as women, so much back in our throats.
Right. Your throat
And that
chakra.
is why, yes, and that's why throat issues like thyroid issues, for example, impact women like 90% more than men.
Mm.
That's real.
Yeah.
50%, 40% of women in their 40s have something going on with their thyroids, and they probably don't even know it.
Yeah.
And it's because we withhold release from ourselves. We do not express ourselves. We don't clear that energy right
Mm-hmm.
here.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, expressing yourself and talking about your needs is really great, but
Yeah.
screaming is also deeply effective.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because there was a practice that I had in Mama Gina's school, the Woman of the Arts, and we did do that in those sessions. We haven't been in it now for since 2019, but that was one of the big things there. And then I also saw this show, Tabitha's Salon Takeover or whatever, and there was one woman on there who her sister had left her running the business by herself, and she was really upset about it. And so Tabitha took her out to the beach and had her scream at the ocean,
Mm,
like, why did
mm-hmm.
you leave me, like all the things that she didn't get to say to her sister, and how cathartic that was for her to just
Yes.
release all of that. And like nobody was around, and plus the ocean is so loud that it absorbs
Yeah.
all of that noise, so nobody's running around like, what's happening, is somebody being killed or whatever. I think that's what
Yeah.
helped, why I don't do it in the house, because there's already a lot of drama in the place upstairs, so I don't want people to think something's going on in here too. But when I get in the car, sometimes I just sort of
Yeah. You know,
you
I,
gotta
I,
let it go.
I accidentally screamed at one of my kids the other day and I felt really bad about it. But also, if
Mm,
I'm being really honest, I was like, damn, that felt good. Not because I directed it at them.
right.
It was like the morning school hustle bustle and I just lost my shit.
Yeah.
But I was like, I'm overdue. Like, I clearly needed that release, and
Right.
I need to be more intentional about giving it to myself all the time
Right. So it
and
doesn't come
bringing
out
it back.
like that.
Yeah, and I think that's also like a good way to think about manifestation. You got to
Mm,
let out the little bits out of you, of your
yeah.
desires, of your intentions. You got to do it consistently so
Yeah.
that it doesn't just get bottled up inside of you,
Yeah. Right.
because it's not about blowing up your whole life, which is, I
No.
think, sometimes what happens where people for so long neglect themselves that they think, you know what, I need a divorce or I need a new career. I actually think, like nature, like the cycles of the moon, the manifestation we all need is actually incremental.
Mm,
It
mm-hmm.
needs to be that slow burn that we invest in
Yeah.
over time and we co-create alongside nature to, evolve into the form we need to reach. It
Yeah.
isn't about like, let me just hold on as long as I can and then burn it all down.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that doesn't work. Doesn't work. So how can someone use poetry as a tool for self-discovery and healing?
So I think the beauty of poetry is, first of all, it isn't a heavy lift. If
Mm,
I were to say to you, read one poem a day, it's a lot
mhm.
easier than saying like read one novel a day,
Yeah,
right? You
for
can
sure.
get the entire an entire universe can be offered to you in 5 lines.
Mm, hmm.
Whereas I think in narrative writing, it takes a little bit more to
Right.
leave someone with that depth of a message. And also, poetry is grounded in emotion.
Mm,
It's
hmm.
less about the words and more about how are these words making the reader feel.
Hmm.
In my book, in the January chapter, which is all about expression, I have a piece that says, if your silence is the only reason it's working, it's not working.
Mm, yeah.
And I could have written a whole self help chapter about why when you repress your needs, it's not an authentic relationship and you're not going to be fulfilled. I mean, but when I say that to you, if your silence is the only reason it's working, it's not working.
Right.
It kind of, it's like a breath, right? You have to go
Yeah.
afterwards. You
Right.
feel it. You feel what that is evoking in you.
Yeah.
And so I really like to write poetry that does that, that in just a short few lines unlocks a deep truth.
Hmm. I love that. And you also explore like themes of planting, tending, harvesting, resting. How can we identify what season that we're in and how do we honor it or how do we move forward or even sit in that space for a minute or two?
Well, I think the easiest way to do it is just to see what season we're all in. I
Yeah.
think this is a collective manifestation book in the
Mm-hmm.
sense that, the year doesn't actually start in January. Look outside in January. Is anything being born? No.
No.
It's a
Dead.
period of deep stillness, rest, hibernation, surrender. That's what's happening in January. So, this message we keep getting bombarded with that it's a new year, let's get going, like
Mm,
that is not aligned with nature.
true.
That
That's
is
true.
not the season. Now is the season to start letting your
Planting.
seeds come up. You know what I mean? Like, this
Mm-hmm.
is the planting season,
Right.
spring. This is the
Mm-hmm.
spring awakening. And so, in the book, I I offer an expression of what each season is.
Mm-hmm.
Summer is joyful expansion, right?
Mm,
That's what summer is for. Fall is about appreciation. It's about harvest. It's about seeing what you've done. And then winter is really about rest.
mm-hmm.
And so I think it takes some pressure off if you're like in the dead of winter and not feeling deeply productive. Like, sure, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But also, that means that in summer, when it's like blooming time and the world is alive, like let that motivate you to go out into the world, connect, meet people,
Mm-hmm.
do things, experience the vitality of that time.
Right.
And so for me, and then you may find yourself in your own cyclical nature where maybe January you are blooming,
Mm-hmm.
and that's okay too. It's
Yeah.
just about understanding that maybe then in March it will be your time to rest
Yeah.
and allowing yourself different seasons in your life where it doesn't need to just be go, 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 go 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Right. So what What advice would you give to someone who, I don't know, they're struggling with trusting themselves and their journey? Like, they're like, oh, I wanted this to happen, and they've tried surrendering it, but it's still sort of percolating, and then they're just not seeing anything happen. Like, what would you tell them?
I think self-care is an important piece. So I would ask that person, like, how are you taking care of yourself right now? And what does
Mm,
taking care of yourself look like?
yeah.
So for me, like for someone who writes about self-love and self-care, like you
Hmm.
would think I am like an expert self-care practitioner. And the truth of the matter is I'm not. Like I'm wired to take care of others before I take care of myself. I
Hmm.
have a lot of bad habits that I, you know, fell victim to after the pandemic as like
Mm,
coping mechanisms for my anxiety that I need
right.
to unwind.
Hmm.
And I'm in a season now of really trying to be more disciplined in my self care because
Mm,
when I take care of myself, I become infinitely powerful.
mm,
And when I am infinitely powerful, then the world starts working for me.
yeah.
But when I'm in a place of like feeling weak and sad and a victim and which I have these thoughts all the time. Like there have been so many moments in my life where I keep waiting for this white knight to come rescue me.
Right.
And the only person who ever rescues me is me.
Mm,
And when I rescue myself, like I said, I am so powerful. And I think
hmm.
we all have incredible power. So I
Yeah.
would tell that person who's suffering, like, okay, like let's break it down. Are you practicing any kind of self reflection? Are you
Mm,
journaling? Are you reading any books that help you connect more deeply with yourself? Are you moving your body? Even for like 5 minutes a day. I would tell
hmm.
them put a song on and shake your entire body from head to toe every morning and see how you
Hmm.
feel after that. Are you leaning on your community? Are you removing yourself from isolation and putting yourself out there, even just to be with a friend for 5 minutes,
Hmm.
just so you're not in it alone? Because at least for me, when I am alone is when I am hardest on myself.
Hmm.
It's harder to be hard on yourself when you're in community.
Yeah.
And so I would really ask them to visit, like, are you taking care of yourself in the way that you need to be taken care of? And if
Hmm.
the answer is no, I would start really small. Like pick one thing that you're willing to change. And then once you lock that in, make it two things or three things.
Hmm.
And then you start to slowly transform your life. And not because you made some grand gesture, but because you
Right.
committed to yourself in a consistent way. And that was kind of the premise behind the self love pinky ring, right? Like I created
Hmm.
this ring not just to give people a flashy outward symbol of self belonging, it was to have a deeply personal reminder that you belong to yourself and
Hmm.
that you deserve your own love and care and
Hmm.
that you're willing to commit to yourself, not
Yeah.
just for a lifetime, but for every day.
Right. And I thoroughly enjoy mine. I have four of them. It's insane. So if our listeners can take away just one message from Moon Garden, what do you hope it'll be?
um, give yourself peace. Give
Mm,
yourself the one word that's allowed in the garden. And that can take a different shape for everyone. But I think
hmm.
everyone knows what it is that they are holding on to that's disrupting their peace.
Hmm.
Maybe it's an old heartbreak. Maybe it's an unfulfilled dream. Maybe it's, a relationship in their present life that just isn't working for them anymore. Maybe it's your best friend of 20 years that just doesn't work. It's
Yeah.
disrupting your peace.
Hmm.
So I would say if you truly want to manifest, if you want to create a life that brings you deep pleasure, have the courage to say no to something, to let go of something with the goal of giving yourself peace. Because
Hmm.
I think peace is the foundation of our manifestations.
Hmm. Yeah, I would agree.
Mhm.
And so Moon Garden comes out in October. So where can everyone find it?
So, the greatest gift your listeners can give to me is to pre order the book now.
Oh.
You can find it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, at your local bookseller. You can walk into your local bookshop and request it, and they can order it. And the reason pre orders are so incredibly important for authors is because it is what signals to bookstores that, oh, this is going to be a book I should invest in.
Mm,
Because even like a big retailer like Amazon, it's pre-orders that tell them, oh, I should stock enough books instead of just a wait and see.
Right.
And so basically, by pre-ordering, you bring my manifestation to life. Like if my
Yes.
manifestation, my greatest wish is for this book to reach as many people as possible,
Mm-hmm.
the people who pre-order are really the gardeners. Like I've
Nice.
planted the seed, but I can't grow it without you.
Nice. I like that. And so we can pre-order. And then where can everyone find you and follow you
Of
on
course.
social media and everywhere?
So I love connecting. So if you do follow me on any of my platforms, send me a DM, introduce yourself. You can find me at melodygodfred everywhere. Uh, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Threads. I also have a newsletter where I talk about things like this called Self-Love Confidential, which is on Substack. Just search for Melody Godfred on Substack.
Hmm.
Or you can just go to my website, melodygodfred.com, and there you'll have access to all the different ways to reach me and also those pre-order links for the book.
And you mentioned that you had that workshop for the blood moon. Do you have any other workshops that are coming up and that people can be to find out about?
So the best way to stay connected with regard to my workshop calendar is either to connect with me on Instagram or through my newsletter. That's where I always let people know first.
Okay.
But I'm planning, my hope is to do something for June. So you, Kara, will be definitely energetically part of that because I
Yes.
really want to dig deeper into this idea that we all deserve a little more pleasure in our lives, and
Hmm.
let's make that our priority.
And are they in person or are they on Zoom, or how do your workshops
So
usually?
this Blood Moon one was in person, but
Hmm.
I'm also exploring doing some virtually so that we can meet with a broader audience.
Okay, cool. Because I mean, I would
Yeah.
love to come to California, but if I can't, then
Yes.
definitely want to be able to zoom in on what you got going on over
I
there.
would love that. Thank
That'd be
you.
amazing. Well, as always, it's been an amazing conversation with you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for spending a little bit of time with me. And we'll definitely have another interview after
I look
Moon Garden
forward to
comes
it.
out and we can
Thank you.
practice all of this manifestation in between.
Yes, thank you so much. You are an inspiration. I'm so grateful to stay connected with you and to watch you thrive. It's really a gift.
Oh, thank you so much. And you definitely were a part of that because
Thank
when I
you.
found you, I was like, this is so awesome. So, yes, I wear my pinky rings all the time. And yes, you
Thank you.
definitely gave me a gift with that last one, that white quartz was amazing. And the black quartz. I love that one too because you
I
made that
love
one
that one
personally
too.
for me. So,
Yeah,
love
that
it.
one's,
Love it.
well,
Well, thank you
thank
everyone
you.
for joining us, and definitely like, follow, and share for more fabulous conversations with fabulous women over 40. Ta ta!
Thank you for joining us today. Please subscribe so you won't miss our next conscious conversation with Kara and her fabulous guests. Follow Kara on social, on Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, Clubhouse, at Kara Allan, and connect with her on her website at karaallan.com. Also, leave a review if you enjoyed the conversation. Thanks again, and see you next time.